The chains that couldn't break her. The auction hall smelled of sweat, metal, and desperation. Dim, flickering lights buzzed overhead, casting eerie shadows over the crowd of merchants, mercenaries, and slavers gathered to buy living cargo. The air was thick with the stink of greed, the murmurs of the bidders blending into an unsettling hum. At the center of the raised platform, under the cold gaze of the spectators, she stood, chained, bruised, but unbroken. Her name was Kayla, a warrior of the Vayari race, and despite the weeks of captivity, despite the shackles biting into her wrists and ankles, her golden eyes still burned with defiance. The auctioneer, a bloated, slug-like man named Drakkar, smirked as he gestured toward her, his voice slithering through the speakers like oil. Behold, a pureblood Vayari, strong, unyielding, and fiercely independent, a rare specimen, perfect for labor, combat, or other services. A ripple of laughter swept through the audience, their expressions a mix of cruel amusement and cold calculation. Kayla barely flinched. She had endured worse than this. The chains, they were nothing. The humiliation, temporary. But the anger that smoldered in her chest, that would never fade. She had been taken from her homeworld, Ashreya, after a battle that never should have been lost. The humans had warned them, warned her people that the Zereth raiders were coming. But the Vayari Council, proud and blind, refused to listen. They believed no one could conquer them. They were wrong. Now Kayla stood here, reduced from a warrior to a prize. The bidding began. Numbers climbed -3,000 credits, 5,000, 7,000. The buyers eyed her like livestock, debating her worth as if she weren't standing right in front of them. Then, a voice cut through the noise. 15,000 credits. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the source of the bid, a tall, broad-shouldered human standing near the back. He was clad in a worn-out military jacket, his stance relaxed, but his expression unreadable. Kayla's gaze locked onto his. There was no greed in his eyes, no amusement, no sick curiosity, just resolve. The auctioneer's jaw twitched, clearly thrown off. 15,000, he repeated, blinking rapidly. That's quite a price for a single slave. The human pulled a small device from his pocket. Transferred, instantly. A ding confirmed the payment. The whispers started immediately. Why would a human pay that much for a Vayari? He's either rich or insane. What's he planning to do with her? Kayla's jaw clenched as Drakkar chuckled, rubbing his stubby fingers together before waving toward the guards. Sold. The chains binding her wrists and ankles clicked open, falling to the ground with a dull clang. Kayla rubbed her bruised skin, eyes never leaving the human as he approached the stage. He offered a hand. She didn't take it. You think this buys my loyalty, human? She hissed. His lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. No, but it gets you out of here alive. Kayla hesitated. Then, with one last glance at the sneering faces in the crowd, she stepped forward. The escape that wasn't. The moment they exited the auction hall, she felt the tension shift. Kayla didn't need to be told what was coming. The other bidders weren't pleased. A slave that expensive, bought by a human. They weren't going to let that slide. Sure enough, the sound of boots hitting metal filled the alleyway behind them. A group of 3 heavily armed mercenaries stepped forward. Their leader, a scared reptilian brute, grinning. You must be new here, human, he sneered, a heavy baton resting on his shoulder. You don't just outbid slavers and walk away. The human, Joran Cade, sighed, shaking his head. And here I was hoping for a quiet exit. He moved before Kayla could react. His hand blurred to his hip holster, and in a heartbeat, a plasma pistol was in his grip. The first shot hit the lead mercenary square in the chest. The second hit the one on the right before he could even draw his weapon. The third managed to fire a stun round. Kayla twisted, the shot missing her by an inch, before Joran took him down with a final blast. The alley fell silent, smoke curling from the barrel of Joran's pistol. Kayla arched an eyebrow. "You're quick." He smirked, holstering his weapon. "You should see me when I'm actually trying." She flexed her hands, feeling the rush of adrenaline settle. "You didn't need to do that," she said after a moment. "I can fight my own battles." Joran studied her. "I don't doubt that," he said simply. "But if we stick around, we won't have the chance for round 2. Kayla exhaled sharply, glancing at the bodies cooling on the ground. "Fine. Let's move." A debt she didn't ask for. As they navigated the neon-lit underbelly of the trade district, Kayla couldn't help but steal glances at him. Joran Cade, a human, a soldier from the way he moved, but not a slaver, not a criminal. "Why did you do it?" she asked finally. He didn't look at her. "Because I know what it's like to be treated like you're nothing." Something in her chest tightened. Before she could say anything, Joran slowed. His hand went to his belt, eyes scanning the rooftops. Kayla felt it too. They were being watched. The slavers weren't finished with them. "They'll send more," she murmured. Joran grinned, drawing his weapon. "Let them try." And as the first shadow moved above them, Kayla smiled for the first time in weeks. Because finally, she had a fight worth winning. The hunt begins. The neon-lit slums of Zurich Station were alive with movement. Dimly glowing street signs flickered overhead, casting a distorted light on the damp metallic ground. The air was thick with the scent of ozone, burning metal, and the ever-present stench of desperation that clung to places like this, where people were bought, sold, and forgotten. Kayla and Joran moved fast, weaving through the narrow alleyways between rusted buildings, stepping over scattered debris and the occasional unconscious drunkard. The weight of pursuers in the shadows was impossible to ignore. "They're still on us." Kayla's golden eyes flicked up toward the rooftops. She had spent years on battlefields, the subtle disturbances in the air, the unnatural silence behind them, the flickers of movement in peripheral vision. It was all too familiar. Joran didn't slow. "Of course they are." His voice was calm, but his hand never left the grip of his plasma pistol. The slavers weren't going to let a 15,000 credit prize walk away that easily. A fight in the shadows. As they rounded a corner into a deserted loading bay, the first shot rang out. A bright red plasma bolt struck the wall inches from Kayla's head, scorching a deep mark into the metal. She reacted instinctively. Dropping into a slide, she grabbed a discarded steel pipe from the ground, rolling behind a rusted cargo container for cover. Joran fired back, a quick double tap, hitting one of the slavers on the catwalk above. The body hit the ground hard. A second attacker leaped down, landing with a heavy thud in front of Kayla. His reptilian features twisted into a sneer, twin vibroblades humming to life in his hands. "Surrender, girl. You were bred for servitude, not freedom." Kayla snarled. She twisted her grip on the metal pipe and lunged forward. The first strike knocked one of his blades aside, and the second slammed into his gut. His snarl turned into a wheeze as he stumbled back, but he wasn't finished. He swung again. Kayla ducked, moving faster than he anticipated, and drove her knee into his chest, sending him crashing into a pile of crates. "I was bred for war." The slaver didn't get up. Joran's last stand. Joran, meanwhile, was outnumbered. 3 more slavers moved in, their weapons drawn, their expressions filled with confidence. One of them, a tall, insectoid-looking alien, grinned. "You shouldn't have interfered, human." Joran exhaled, shaking his head. "You guys talk too much." And then he moved. His first shot blew through the insectoid's knee, sending it collapsing with a scream. He dodged a blade strike from the second attacker, spinning around and slamming the butt of his pistol into the alien's skull. The third rushed him from behind, but before Joran could react, Kayla was already there. She grabbed the slaver by the collar, yanked him off his feet, and slammed him into the wall so hard the metal dented. "You're welcome," she muttered. Joran smirked. I had it under control. Sure you did. But the fight wasn't over yet. Because more were coming. The price of freedom. The distant hum of engines sent a chill down Kayla's spine. They're deploying drones. Joren cursed under his breath. That means they're done playing around. Kayla wiped the sweat from her brow, scanning their surroundings. They were pinned down. If they stayed here, it was only a matter of time before they were overwhelmed. But if they ran without a plan, they'd be cut down before they got 5 steps. We need an exit. Now. Joren's eyes flickered toward a nearby maintenance shaft. Think you can fit? Kayla arched an eyebrow. Are you saying I'm too big? I'm saying I don't want to get stuck in a tunnel with an angry warrior who blames me for her death. She rolled her eyes, but didn't argue. Without wasting another second, she grabbed a nearby wrench and smashed open the panel. Joren covered her, firing 3 more shots at the slavers who were closing in. Go. Now. Kayla crawled inside first, her muscles burning as she forced her body through the tight, grimy space. Joren followed, just as the first drone appeared overhead. A loud, mechanical voice echoed through the alleyway. Fugitive detected. Engage. And then the tunnel exploded behind them. A temporary victory. They crawled through the maintenance shaft for what felt like hours. The further they went, the colder the air became, the station's sub-level vents carrying a stale metallic scent. Finally, Kayla kicked open a rusted hatch, emerging into an abandoned service bay. She took a deep breath. I hate tunnels. Joren slid out behind her, dusting himself off. Be grateful you had a tunnel. If not, we'd be in a cage right now. Kayla frowned, watching as he checked his weapon's power levels. Why did you do it? Joren didn't look up. Do what? Buy me. Save me. Risk your life for someone you don't even know. The question hung in the air for a long moment. Finally, Joren sighed. Because I know what it's like to be seen as nothing. Kayla blinked. He wasn't lying. She had spent her entire life surrounded by people who thought they were superior, people who saw her as a tool to be used or discarded. Now, here was a human, a species most of the galaxy looked down on, choosing to stand beside her, even when he didn't have to. She crossed her arms. You realize you've made yourself a target, right? Joren smirked. Wouldn't be the first time. Kayla huffed. Then I guess I better make sure you don't get yourself killed, human. Joren laughed. You sound like you care. Don't push your luck. Despite everything, the chains, the battle, the escape, Kayla felt something strange settle in her chest. For the first time since her capture, she wasn't just running to survive. She was running toward something. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't running alone. A bounty on their heads. The tunnels beneath Zurich Station smelled of damp metal and industrial rot. Flickering emergency lights barely illuminated the rusted pathways, and the air carried a faint charge, the lingering hum of the city's underground power grid. Joren Cade led the way, moving silently but quickly, his plasma pistol still warm from the earlier fight. Behind him, Kayla moved like a ghost, her golden eyes flickering with restless energy. Her muscles were still sore from weeks of captivity, but her instincts were razor-sharp. Even in the dim corridors, she could feel the presence of watchful eyes. Someone was tracking them. How much farther? She asked, voice low. Joren glanced at his wrist-mounted scanner, the holographic display flickering against his skin. Few more clicks. There's a safe house on the outskirts. If we get there before sunrise, we can. A warning beep cut him off. Joren froze, his body tensing. Kayla instantly dropped into a crouch, her sharp eyes scanning the darkness ahead. What is it? Joren slowly turned the scanner toward her. We're not just being tracked, Kayla. He exhaled sharply. We've got a bounty on our heads. A sinking feeling twisted in her gut. She took a step closer, peering at the display. A live broadcast. 2 moving targets. Their faces. And a flashing price of 50,000 credits. The Slaver King's Wrath. The bounty notice was being transmitted across the underworld, flashing on terminals, personal devices, and black market hubs. Slavers, mercenaries, bounty hunters, everyone on Zurich Station would see it. And every single one of them would want a piece. Kayla's hands curled into fists. Who the hell put that out? Joran's jaw tightened. Who do you think? He swiped at the scanner, zooming in on the transmission source. A holographic sigil hovered beside the bounty notice, a grotesque fusion of a skull and a coiled serpent. Kayla recognized it immediately. The Slaver King. Her stomach twisted. The Slaver King wasn't just some crime lord. He was a legend, a monstrous force in the galaxy's criminal underworld. Entire colonies had been raised under his command. Thousands of lives stolen, sold, or erased. And now he wanted them. Joran's fingers tightened around his pistol as the reality of their situation set in. He's not just mad about the money. Kayla nodded, her face grim. No, this is personal. She had been supposed to be a trophy, a rare, high-value slave to be sold off to one of the Slaver King's VIP clients. By escaping, they had humiliated him, and he wouldn't stand for that. Joran rubbed a hand over his face, muttering under his breath. Well, that's just fantastic. A dangerous proposal. Kayla took a slow breath, assessing their situation. They were deep underground, which meant two things. The bounty hunters wouldn't have a clear tracking signal yet. The longer they stayed in one place, the faster their luck would run out. She turned to Joran. We need to get off this station. Joran let out a short, humorless laugh. Brilliant idea. I'll just walk up to the nearest spaceport and politely ask to board a ship while half the planet is trying to kill us. Kayla rolled her eyes. That's not what I meant. We need a ship, and I know where to get one. Joran studied her for a long moment. I'm guessing this isn't gonna be a peaceful transaction. It rarely is. A flicker of something dangerous crossed her face. There's a merc captain who owes me a favor. Joran raised an eyebrow. A favor. Kayla hesitated for the briefest second. More like, I saved his life once, and he's too proud to admit he owes me. Joran exhaled, weighing the risk. Then he nodded. Lead the way, warrior princess. The safe house isn't safe. They made it to the outskirts of the district, a rusted industrial zone filled with abandoned warehouses and collapsed infrastructure. The safe house was supposed to be in one of the old factory ruins, a secure hideout run by ex-military contacts that Joran trusted. Only problem. It wasn't secure anymore. As they neared the entrance, Kayla held up a hand. Wait. Joran frowned. Then he saw it. Bodies, 4 of them, slumped near the doorway. The smell of burned flesh and plasma residue filled the air. Shit. Kayla crouched, touching one of the fallen men. His uniform bore the same insignia that Joran's old contacts had worn. Ex-military. They never had a chance. Joran stepped over the bodies, his posture tense. Then we're not alone. A soft metallic click echoed from above. Kayla moved first. She tackled Joran just as gunfire ripped through the air, scorching the ground where he had been standing a second ago. They rolled into cover behind a stack of rusted crates, just as the bounty hunters revealed themselves. A half-dozen figures emerged from the ruins, their armor patched and battle-worn, their weapons gleaming in the dim light. One of them, a massive, cybernetically enhanced brute, grinned down at them. You really thought you could hide? Kayla's grip tightened on her weapon. Joran sighed. You ever get the feeling the universe just really hates you? She shot him a look. Less talking, more shooting. Joran smirked. I like the way you think. And then the gunfight erupted. The battle for survival. Blaster fire lit up the ruins, the air thick with smoke and the smell of burning metal. Kayla moved like a predator, darting between cover, closing the distance with terrifying speed. She slammed into one of the bounty hunters, disarming him in a single motion before snapping his weapon in half against her knee. Joran took out another with a clean headshot, ducking behind cover as plasma bolts scorched the crates around him. The cybernetic brute charged forward, swinging the heavy shock baton. Kayla dodged, barely. The weapon slammed into the wall behind her, sending metal shards flying. She retaliated fast, driving her knee into his stomach before delivering an uppercut so powerful it sent him crashing backward. Joran tossed her a stolen blaster. Think fast. She caught it without missing a beat and fired, the shot hitting another bounty hunter square in the chest. The last remaining enemy hesitated, realizing the fight was lost. He turned to run. Nope. Joran fired once, and the bounty hunter dropped. The silence stretched, both of them breathing heavily. Then Kayla grinned. Not bad, human. Joran laughed, reloading his pistol. Let's get the hell out of here before more show up. They weren't safe yet, and with a bounty on their heads, things were only going to get worse. But for the first time, Kayla didn't feel like she was fighting alone.